Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, humanity's first true warship designed from the ground up to fight the Zetharians. The ship had been built in secret at the Lagrange Point shipyards, combining captured alien technology with human innovation and desperation. All stations report ready. Captain, Commander Lisa Hendricks said from her position at the tactical station. Jake nodded, looking at the view screen showing the Zetharian blockade line. 20 enemy ships hung in space between Earth and the outer system, cutting off supply routes and preventing human expansion. They had been there for 2 months, a constant reminder that Earth was under siege. "Take us in," Jake ordered. "Let's see what this ship can do." The Retribution moved forward, accelerating to speeds that would have torn apart earlier human vessels. The experimental engines hummed with power, pushing the ship faster and faster. The Zetharian fleet detected them immediately and opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked through space, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a city block. They struck the Retribution shields and were deflected. The new shield technology, reverse-engineered from captured alien generators and improved by human engineers, held firm. "Shields at 85%, Lisa reported. "Still holding." "Weapons range in 20 seconds, the gunnery officer called out. Jake smiled. They had survived the opening salvo. Now it was time to show the Zetharians what humans had learned. Target their flagship. Fire when ready. The Retribution's main weapon was unlike anything the Zetharians had seen before. Human scientists had taken their particle accelerator technology, the same systems used in research facilities, and scaled them up to weapon size. The result was a beam of particles moving at nearly the speed of light, hitting with the force of a nuclear weapon. The beam lanced out across space and struck the Zetharian flagship's shields. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien shields flickered, overloaded by the unexpected weapon. They held but barely. "Direct hit," Lisa called out. "Their shields are weakening. All batteries, continuous fire," Jake commanded. "Let's see how long they can take it." The battle became something the Zetharians had never experienced with a primitive species. A fair fight. The Retribution traded blows with ships twice its size and held its ground. Its shields absorbed punishment that would have destroyed earlier vessels. Its weapons punched through alien defenses that had seemed invincible just months before. 2 Zetharian cruisers moved to flank the Retribution, trying to overwhelm it with crossfire. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers, and the ship danced through space with an agility that surprised the enemy. Human pilots had always been good at flying, and now they had ships that could match their skills. "Captain, the flagship is launching fighters," Lisa warned. "Launch ours," Jake replied calmly, "and bring us around for another pass on that flagship. I want it out of this fight." Human fighters streamed from the Retribution's bays, meeting the alien attack craft in the space between the two fleets. The dogfight was brutal and fast, both sides having learned the other's tactics over months of combat. Nicole Brennan led her squadron into the fight, her new fighter responding to her commands like an extension of her own body. She had been promoted after the Battle of Luna, given command of an elite unit flying the best ships humanity could build. "Break by pairs," she ordered her pilots. Standard intercept pattern. "Watch each other's backs." The fighting was intense. Alien fighters exploded under human fire. Human fighters were destroyed by alien weapons, but slowly, gradually, the humans began to gain the upper hand. They were learning faster than the Zetharians, adapting quicker, finding new tactics for every situation. On the Retribution, Jake pressed his attack on the flagship. His ship's weapons hammered at the weakening shields, each hit bringing them closer to collapse. The Zetharian ship fought back desperately, its plasma cannon scoring hits on the Retribution's hull. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Lisa reported. "Damage control teams responding." "Keep firing," Jake ordered. "We've almost got them." The Zetharian flagship's shields finally failed with a flash of blue light. Human missiles streaked through the gap, striking the alien ship's armor and punching deep into its hull. Secondary explosions rippled across the enemy vessel as critical systems were destroyed. "Flagship is heavily damaged," Lisa said. "They're retreating." Jake watched as the massive alien ship turned away, limping back toward the safety of its fleet. He had done it. He had hurt them badly enough to make them run. "All ships, pursue and engage," Admiral Jacob Hayes ordered from Earth. The rest of the human fleet, emboldened by the Retribution's success, surged forward to press the attack. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the Zetharian blockade line was broken. 3 alien ships had been destroyed, including 2 cruisers and a destroyer. The flagship was so damaged it would need months of repairs. The remaining Zetharian vessels retreated to the outer system, no longer confident in their superiority. The Retribution had taken heavy damage but survived. Jake walked through his ship, seeing the destruction and the tired faces of his crew. They had fought like heroes, every single one of them. "We did good today," he told them. "We showed them that Earth can hit back." In the command center beneath Colorado, Admiral Jacob Hayes was planning humanity's first offensive operation. For 4 months, humans had been defending, reacting to Zetharian attacks and trying to survive. Now it was time to take the fight to the enemy. Intelligence has identified their main supply depot in the asteroid belt, he told the assembled commanders. It's where they store ammunition, spare parts, and fuel for their fleet. If we destroy it, we can cripple their operations in this system. Commander Peter Grant studied the tactical display. The depot was deep in enemy-controlled space, defended by patrol ships and automated defenses. Getting to it would be difficult. Getting out alive would be nearly impossible. "I'll lead the strike team," Peter volunteered. "The Defiant has been rebuilt." "We're ready," Jacob nodded. "You'll have support from 2 other ships. The mission is simple. Get in, plant nuclear charges on the depot's reactor core, and get out before it explodes. We're estimating you'll have 30 minutes from insertion to detonation." "Understood, sir," Peter said. "We'll make it count." The strike force left Earth 3 days later, moving through the asteroid belt on silent running. They used the rocks for cover, drifting between asteroids to avoid detection. It took them 2 days to reach the depot. Lieutenant Danny Cooper was part of the Marine assault team. His arm had been replaced with a military-grade prosthetic after the Battle of Luna, but he had refused medical retirement. He was still a soldier, still able to fight, and that was all that mattered. "Remember the plan," he told his squad as they prepared to board the assault pods. "We get in fast, we move to the reactor core, we plant the charges, and we get out. No heroics, no detours." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," they replied in unison. The assault pods launched from the Defiant, streaking toward the depot like bullets. They hit the outer hull and cut through with plasma torches, breaching into the alien facility within seconds. Danny led his squad through the corridors, moving quickly and quietly. They encountered Zetharian workers and security forces, but the aliens were not prepared for an attack this deep in their territory. The humans showed no mercy, firing on sight and pushing forward. "Reactor core ahead," Corporal Sam Mitchell said, checking his scanner. 200 meters. They ran, their boots clanging on the metal floors. Alarms began to sound as the Zetharians realized what was happening. More security forces appeared, trying to stop the human assault team. The firefight was short and brutal. Danny's squad cut through the defenders, taking casualties but never stopping. They reached the reactor core with 15 minutes to spare. "Plant the charges," Danny ordered. "Everyone else hold this position." Sam and another demolitions expert worked quickly, placing nuclear devices around the reactor's core systems. Each bomb was small but powerful enough to trigger a catastrophic explosion when the reactor destabilized. "Charges set," Sam reported. "Timer set for 30 minutes. "Everyone back to the pods," Danny commanded. "Move, move, move." They ran back through the depot, fighting their way past Zetharian forces that were now fully alerted. 2 of Danny's Marines fell in the retreat, cut down by alien fire. He wanted to stop, wanted to help them, but there was no time. The squad reached their pods and launched, accelerating away from the depot as fast as their engines could push them. Behind them, the Zetharian workers were evacuating in panic, realizing too late what the humans had done. "Clear the blast radius," Peter Grant ordered from the Defiant. "All ships, maximum acceleration." The nuclear charges detonated exactly on schedule, and the depot's reactor went critical. The explosion was massive, creating a brief new sun in the asteroid belt. The shockwave destroyed everything within 100 kilometers, vaporizing alien ships and installations. Danny watched from his pod as the light faded. He thought about the 2 Marines he had left behind. The price of this victory. Was it worth it? He did not know. He just knew they had hurt the enemy badly, and maybe that would make the difference. The strike force returned to Earth as heroes. They had proven that humanity could attack Zetharian installations. The war had lasted 6 months and both sides were bleeding. Emperor Vorn of the Zetharian Empire sat in his throne room, reading casualty reports that should never have existed. A simple conquest of a primitive world had turned into a grinding conflict that was draining military resources needed elsewhere in the Empire. Your Majesty, we have now lost 43 ships in the Sol system, his military advisor reported. Additionally, 12 installations have been destroyed, including the primary supply depot. Our forces are requesting significant reinforcements. And the humans? Vorn asked quietly. They have suffered enormous casualties. Millions dead. Their orbital infrastructure has been repeatedly damaged. By all logical measures, they should have surrendered months ago. But they have not. Vorn finished. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the capital city of his empire. Why? What drives them to continue this futile resistance? Our analysts believe it is a fundamental difference in psychology, Your Majesty. Humans do not calculate acceptable losses the way we do. They simply refuse to accept defeat as a possibility. Vorn was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Prepare a diplomatic mission. I will not sacrifice this empire for one stubborn planet. If they cannot be conquered by force, perhaps they can be negotiated with. The decision sent shockwaves through the Zetharian military. Never before had the Empire offered terms to a species it had declared war upon. It was an admission that humans could not be broken by conventional military force. On Earth, the news of the Zetharian diplomatic mission was met with cautious optimism and deep suspicion. President Alan Carter called an emergency meeting with world leaders and military commanders. They want to negotiate, he told the assembled group. After 6 months of trying to exterminate us, they suddenly want to talk. What's changed? We hurt them, Admiral Jacob Hayes replied. The destruction of their supply depot, the loss of ships, the constant harassment of their forces. We've made this war too expensive for them to continue. So they want peace? Asked the Chinese premier. They want surrender on better terms, Dr. Helen Price corrected. Do not mistake this for peace. They're looking for a way to win without losing more ships. We need to be very careful about what we agree to. It was decided that a negotiating team would meet with the Zetharian ambassador in a fortified bunker that served as neutral ground. Helen was chosen to lead the human delegation, her expertise in alien technology making her invaluable in understanding Zetharian intentions. The meeting took place 1 week later. Ambassador Krell was a tall Zetharian with dark scales and cold eyes. He looked at the human delegation with what might have been contempt or respect. It was hard to tell with an alien face. The Empire is prepared to offer terms, Krell said through his translator device. We will withdraw our forces from your system. In exchange, you will cease all military operations against us and agree to non-aggression protocols. Helen listened carefully, then shook her head. No, those terms are unacceptable. Krell's expression changed, showing surprise. You refuse peace? We refuse those terms, Helen clarified. Here are our demands. Your empire will withdraw completely from this sector of space. You will provide reparations for the damage you have caused to our world and our people. You will surrender detailed intelligence on any other species you currently oppress, and you will formally recognize Earth as a sovereign power that is not to be threatened or coerced by any external force. The room fell silent. Even the other human negotiators looked shocked. Helen was not asking for peace. She was demanding victory. These terms are outrageous, Krell said coldly. You cannot dictate to the Empire. Then we continue the war, Helen replied calmly. And let me be very clear about what that means. We have already demonstrated we can strike your supply lines anywhere in this system. We are currently developing faster-than-light capable warships. Within a year, maybe less, we will begin hitting targets in your home systems. We will never stop, Ambassador. We will fight you across the galaxy if necessary. We will make this war so costly, so endless, so devastating that your empire will collapse under the weight of it. So I suggest you reconsider what is and is not acceptable. Krell stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood. I will relay your demands to the High Command. But I warn you, humans, you are making a dangerous enemy. You made us an enemy when you threatened our world, Helen replied. We're just teaching you what that actually means. The negotiation lasted 3 weeks, with both sides making demands and counter-demands. The Zetharian Empire was not accustomed to negotiating from a position of weakness, but the math was clear. They could continue the war and lose more ships, more soldiers, more resources. or they could accept modified terms and salvage what remained of their pride. While the diplomats argued, the war continued. Captain Jake Sullivan led the retribution on raids against Zitharian outposts, destroying communications relays and supply ships. Each attack was carefully planned to maximize damage while minimizing human casualties. Another successful mission, Lisa Hendricks reported as the retribution jumped back to Earth space. 3 supply ships destroyed, 1 communications station offline. Jake nodded, but there was no joy in his expression. How many more ships did we lose? 2 fighters. Both pilots ejected and were recovered. Good, Jake said quietly. Every life saved mattered now. They had lost so many in the first months of the war. Now they were learning to fight smarter, not just harder. Commander Peter Grant was training the next generation of ship commanders, passing on the harsh lessons learned in combat. He stood before a classroom of young officers, some barely out of their teens, and told them the truth about war. The Zitharians are not invincible, he said, but they are dangerous, experienced, and technologically advanced. You will make mistakes. People under your command will die, and you will have to live with those decisions for the rest of your life. The only thing you can do is learn from each battle, adapt faster than the enemy, and never give up. Never. Lieutenant Danny Cooper had returned to active duty, training Marine assault teams for boarding actions and ground combat. His prosthetic arm worked perfectly, but he still felt phantom pains from the limb he had lost. The key to fighting Zitharians in close quarters is speed and aggression, he told his trainees. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, and better armored. But we're faster, more adaptable, and willing to take risks they won't. Use that advantage. One young Marine raised his hand. Sir, is it true you planted the charges that destroyed their supply depot? Danny looked at the kid, seeing his own youth reflected back at him. Yes, it's also true that 2 good Marines died getting us out of there. War is not about glory or medals. It's about completing the mission and bringing your people home. Remember that. Nicole Brennan had been promoted to commander and given responsibility for training new fighter pilots. She pushed them hard because she knew the alternative was sending unprepared pilots to their deaths. In the first month of the war, we lost 70% of our pilots, she told her students bluntly. Most died in their first engagement. Do you know why? Because they froze. Because they panicked. Because they were not ready for what combat actually means. I will not let that happen to you. You will be ready, or you will wash out of this program. There is no third option. The training was brutal, but it worked. The new generation of human pilots was better prepared, better trained, and had a higher survival rate than the veterans of the early battles. Across Earth, the war effort had transformed society. Old social structures had broken down. Jobs, wealth, and status meant nothing compared to contribution to the war. A factory worker producing ammunition was as valued as a corporate executive. A farmer growing food was as important as a scientist designing weapons. Humanity had become a true collective, every person working toward a single goal: survival and victory. Dr. Helen Price stood in her laboratory, reviewing the latest intelligence on Zitharian technology. Human scientists had learned so much in 6 months, reverse engineering alien systems and finding ways to improve them. We're ready to test the prototype FTL drive, she told General Paul Fisher. If it works, we can start building ships capable of reaching Zitharian space within months. And if it doesn't work? Paul asked. Then we keep trying until it does, Helen replied. The Zitharians need to understand that we're not just defending Earth anymore. We're preparing to bring the war to them. They started this. We're going to finish it. The FTL drive test was successful, exceeding all expectations. Humanity now had the capability to build interstellar warships, vessels that could strike at the Zitharian Empire's home territory. When news of the successful test reached the negotiating table, the Zitharian position softened considerably. Ambassador Krell returned with new instructions from the High Command. The Empire is prepared to accept modified terms, he said to Helen. We will withdraw from this sector. We will pay limited reparations, and we will recognize Earth as a sovereign system. In exchange, you will agree to define territorial boundaries and cease offensive operations. Helen considered the offer. It was not everything she had demanded, but it was close. More importantly, it was a victory. Earth would be free, recognized, and left alone. We accept, she said finally. 6 months after the treaty was signed, Earth was a different world. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking down at the planet through the view screen. The scars of war were still visible from orbit. Burn marks where plasma weapons had struck the surface, craters from kinetic bombardment, the glowing lights of cities that had been rebuilt from rubble. But Earth had survived. Against all odds, humanity had survived. "Captain, we're receiving clearance to dock at Station Liberty," Lisa Hendricks reported from her station. Jake nodded. Station Liberty was one of 3 new orbital platforms built in the months after the war, larger and more advanced than anything that had come before. These stations served as both defensive installations and shipyards for the growing human fleet. The war had ended, but humanity had learned a hard lesson. Peace was not guaranteed. Safety was not a given. The galaxy was full of dangers, and Earth needed to be ready for whatever came next. Commander Peter Grant was overseeing construction of the new warship designs in the Lagrange Point shipyards. The vessels being built now made the Retribution look primitive. They incorporated everything humanity had learned from the war, combining human innovation with captured Zytherian technology. "How long until the Endeavour is ready?" Admiral Jacob Hayes asked, standing beside Peter on the observation deck. 3 months, sir," Peter replied. "She'll be the first human ship designed specifically for deep space operations. Fast, heavily armed, and capable of operating independently for up to 2 years. Jacob smiled. "Good, we're going to need ships like that. The galaxy is bigger than we thought, and there are more species out there. Some friendly, some not. We need to be ready for anything." The war had changed humanity's perspective on everything. Before the Zytherians, humans had been focused inward, concerned with their own conflicts and problems. Now they understood their place in a larger universe, one where species fought for survival and dominance. Lieutenant Danny Cooper had taken a teaching position at the new military academy in Colorado. His combat experience made him invaluable for training the next generation of soldiers. He stood before a class of recruits, many of whom had been civilians when the war started. "The Zytherians taught us something important," he told his students. "They taught us that we are not alone in the universe. They taught us that there are threats we cannot ignore. But most importantly, they taught us what we are capable of when pushed to the edge. You are here because humanity needs soldiers who understand that lesson. Soldiers who will never give up no matter the odds." One student raised her hand. "Sir, do you think we'll fight another war like that?" Danny considered the question carefully. "I hope not. War is terrible and the price we paid was enormous. But if another threat comes, if another species tries to conquer us, then yes, we'll fight. And we'll win. Because that's what humans do." Nicole Brennan had been promoted to captain and given command of the new carrier USS Valkyrie. The ship was twice the size of the original Valiant, carrying 200 fighters and equipped with the latest weapons technology. She walked through the hangar bay, watching her pilots prepare for a training exercise. These were good people, well-trained and professional. They had learned from the veterans of the war, absorbing the hard-won knowledge purchased with so much blood. "Commander Chen, how are the new recruits performing?" she asked her executive officer. "Better than expected, Captain," he replied. "The training program you designed is producing excellent pilots. They're ready for anything." Nicole nodded, but she could not shake the memory of those first desperate battles when unprepared pilots had died by the hundreds. "Make sure they understand this is not a game. When the time comes for real combat, everything changes. No amount of training can fully prepare you for that moment." "Yes, ma'am," Chen said quietly. He had flown with her during the war. He knew exactly what she meant. Dr. Helen Price had been appointed as the Director of Xenotechnology Research, overseeing all efforts to understand alien science and develop new technologies. Her laboratory had grown into a massive complex employing thousands of scientists from every nation. "We've made significant progress on the FTL drive design," she reported to President Alan Carter during their monthly briefing. "The next generation will be faster and more efficient. We're also developing improved shield technology and weapon systems. Within 5 years, our fleet will be the most advanced in this sector of space." Alan nodded, looking at the reports she had provided. "And what about defense? If another species decides to attack us? We're building a network of early warning satellites extending out to the edge of the solar system," Helen replied. "Additionally, we have automated defense platforms in orbit around Earth and on the Moon. No one will ever catch us unprepared again." The president leaned back in his chair, showing the exhaustion of a man who had led his species through its darkest hour. I sometimes wonder if we've become too militarized, if we've lost something important in the process of becoming strong enough to survive. We've lost many things, Helen said honestly. Innocence. The belief that the universe is benevolent. The luxury of ignoring threats beyond our world. But we've gained something too. Unity. Purpose. The knowledge that we can overcome any challenge if we work together. I think that's worth the price. Admiral Jacob Hayes stood in a cemetery outside Colorado Springs, the same place he had stood 6 months earlier. The graves stretched even farther now, row upon row of white markers representing the final cost of humanity's survival. Nicole Brennan was buried here, along with tens of thousands of others who had given their lives in the war. Some had died in the first desperate battles. Others had fallen in the later conflicts when victory had seemed possible. All of them had sacrificed everything for their species. "We remember you," Jacob said quietly to the silent graves. "We remember what you did for us, and we promise that your sacrifice was not in vain." He walked slowly through the cemetery, reading names and remembering faces. So many young people, so many lives cut short. The weight of their loss sat heavy on his shoulders, a burden he would carry for the rest of his life. But they had won. Earth was free. Humanity had proven it could not be conquered, could not be broken, could not be made to kneel. On the other side of the galaxy, War Master Thren stood before the Zetharian Imperial Council one final time. He had been recalled from the frontier, his military career effectively over after the failure to conquer Earth. "The humans are expanding their presence in space," he reported. "They are building new ships, establishing outposts, and developing advanced technologies. Within a decade, they may rival our military capabilities. And what do you recommend?" Emperor Vorn asked. "Nothing," Thren replied, surprising the council. "The Empire should leave them alone, mark their territory as restricted space, and forbid any contact. The humans are not a species we can defeat through conventional warfare. They do not think like us, they do not fight like us, and they will never surrender." "You suggest we show fear to a primitive species?" one council member objected. "I suggest we show wisdom," Thren corrected. "The humans are not primitive anymore. We made them into something dangerous when we attacked them. The best thing we can do now is stay away and hope they have no reason to come looking for us." The council debated for hours, but ultimately they agreed. Earth's system was marked in Zetharian star charts with a warning symbol. Extreme danger, avoid contact. It was the highest threat level their classification system had, usually reserved for natural phenomena like black holes or gamma-ray bursts. Now it was also used for a single planet inhabited by a stubborn, innovative, and impossibly resilient species that had refused to accept defeat. 1 year after the war ended, Earth held a memorial service for all those who had died. Every nation participated, setting aside old differences to honor their shared sacrifice. President Alan Carter gave a speech that was broadcast across the planet and to every human installation in space. "We did not choose this war," he said to the billions watching. "It was forced upon us by those who thought we were weak, primitive, easily conquered." They were wrong. They learned, at terrible cost to both sides, what humanity truly is. We are survivors. We are innovators. We are fighters who refuse to accept defeat. But more than that, we are a species that stands together when threatened. We are united in our determination to remain free. He paused, looking at the camera with eyes that had seen too much tragedy. "Today we remember those who gave everything so that we might survive. We remember their courage, their sacrifice, and their unwavering dedication to our species. And we make a promise to them and to ourselves we will never forget. We will never become complacent. We will never allow our world to be threatened again without responding with every weapon we possess." The crowd was silent, each person thinking of their own losses, their own memories of the war. "The Zetharians came to our world expecting an easy conquest," Alan continued. "Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. They found humanity at its finest and its most terrible. They found a species willing to sacrifice everything, to fight without hope of victory, to continue long past the point of rational surrender. And in doing so, they taught us what we are capable of when we truly need to be." The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, and it changed everything. Admiral Jacob Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. He watched the alien broadcast play on the screens in front of him. The translation software had finished its work and the words were clear. Too clear. People of Earth, the alien voice said, cold and emotionless. You have been found by the Zetharian Empire. We have conquered 47 star systems. Your world is now part of our territory. You have 72 hours to surrender all weapons and military forces. If you refuse, your species will be destroyed. This is your only warning. Commander Linda Morrison stood next to Jacob. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pointed at the tactical display. Sir, look at this. 15 ships. Each one is at least 3 times bigger than anything we've ever built. They're positioned just beyond the moon. Jacob nodded slowly. His mind was racing, but his face stayed calm. He had been a military man for 30 years. He had seen wars, conflicts, and terrible things. But nothing like this. Nothing that threatened the entire human race. How long until the president arrives? He asked. 10 minutes, sir, Linda replied. All world leaders are being connected to the emergency network. Jacob looked at the alien ships on the display. They hung in space like dark predators waiting. The Zetharians had done their homework. They knew where Earth was. They knew humans had space stations and satellites. They knew humanity had weapons. And they clearly thought none of it mattered. President Alan Carter arrived exactly on time. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked at the display, then at Jacob. Tell me this is some kind of joke, Alan said quietly. I wish I could, Mr. President, Jacob replied. But it's real. Very real. The emergency meeting began. Leaders from every nation appeared on screens around the room. There was confusion at first, then anger, then fear. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to prepare for war. A few suggested surrender immediately to save lives. It was the president of Russia who spoke the words that changed the discussion. If we surrender, we become slaves, he said. My people have fought too hard for freedom to give it away now. We fight. One by one, the other leaders agreed. Japan, India, China, Brazil. Every nation on Earth came to the same conclusion. They would not kneel to alien conquerors. They would fight even if they had no chance of winning. Alan Carter made the final decision. We fight. God help us, we fight. Captain Nicole Brennan sat in her fighter cockpit aboard the USS Valiant, humanity's newest space carrier. She was checking her systems for the 3rd time, making sure everything was ready. Her hands moved automatically over the controls. She had flown fighters for 10 years, but never in combat. Never against an enemy like this. All pilots, this is Commander Kate Sullivan. The voice came through her helmet. The Zetharians are moving into attack position. They've launched their first wave of fighters. We're going out to meet them. Remember your training. Watch your wingmates, and make every shot count. Nicole thought about her daughter Emma, only 7 years old, safe in the underground shelters in Colorado. She thought about her husband Greg, who worked as an engineer at the space station. Was he still alive? The Zetharians had hit some of the stations in their first strike. Razor Squadron, this is Razor 1, Nicole said into her radio. Stay tight, stay smart. Let's show these aliens what humans can do. Her fighter launched from the Valiant, joining hundreds of others streaming into space. The Earth fleet was impressive by human standards. 3 carriers, 12 destroyers, and over 500 fighters. It had taken 50 years to build this force. Against the Zetharian war machine, it looked like toys. The alien fighters came at them like a swarm of metal insects. They were fast, heavily armed, and their pilots knew exactly what they were doing. The first wave of human fighters died in seconds, simply overwhelmed by superior technology and firepower. Nicole dodged left as plasma bolts streaked past her cockpit. She lined up a shot on an alien fighter and fired. Her missiles tracked true and struck home. The alien exploded in a brief flash of light. Splash one, she reported, already turning to find another target. Around her, the battle was chaos. Human fighters died by the dozens, but they kept fighting. They adapted quickly, learning the aliens' tactics and finding weaknesses. When their missiles ran out, they used their guns. When their guns ran out, some pilots did the unthinkable. Nicole watched as a damaged human fighter trailing fire and venting atmosphere suddenly accelerated straight toward a Zetharian cruiser. The pilot never tried to eject. He just rammed his fighter into the alien ship at full speed, punching through shields that were already weakened by missile strikes. It barely scratched the cruiser, but the message was clear. Humans would not stop fighting ever. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it finally ended, the human fleet was devastated. 2 carriers destroyed, 9 destroyers gone, over 400 fighters lost, thousands of people dead. The Zetharians had lost only 2 ships, but they had not won a surrender, not even close. Commander Peter Grant pulled himself out of the wreckage of his command station aboard the USS Defiant. The ship had been hit hard, with hull breaches on 3 decks and fires burning in 2 others. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. "Status," he shouted, wiping blood from his eyes. "We're still flying, sir," Lieutenant Karen Walsh replied. She was working frantically at her station, rerouting power and sealing damaged sections. "Engines at 40%. Weapons are offline. But we're still here." Peter looked at the tactical display. The Zetharian fleet was pulling back to a higher orbit. "Why are they retreating?" "They won." The answer came an hour later when intelligence intercepted alien communications. The Zetharians were confused. They had won decisively, destroyed most of the human fleet, and still Earth had not surrendered. More than that, they were disturbed by human behavior during the battle. Their reports mentioned human pilots who kept fighting with catastrophic damage to their ships. Pilots who rammed their fighters into alien vessels when their weapons failed. Crew members who continued working even with injuries that should have killed them. The Zetharians had never seen anything like it. In their experience, warfare was about acceptable losses and rational decisions. You fought until the cost became too high. Then you surrendered or retreated. That was how civilized species fought wars. Humans apparently had a different definition of civilized. On Earth, the nations of the world were not mourning. They were preparing. Every factory that could be converted to military production was converted. Every person who could fight was given a weapon. Every scientist who could help was put to work designing new weapons, new defenses, new ways to kill the enemy. Dr. Helen Price stood in an underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her were weapons that would have been illegal a week ago. Autonomous drone swarms, kinetic bombardment systems, orbital minefields, things that violated every treaty humanity had ever signed about warfare. None of that mattered anymore. "Can you have the minefield ready in 48 hours? General Paul Fisher asked her. 24 hours, Helen replied coldly.
And General, I'm also recommending we remove all safety restrictions on our AI defense systems.
"We need them to react faster than any human can." Paul hesitated. "You know what you're asking? Those systems could turn on us after the war." "We'll worry about that if there is an after," Helen said. "Right now, those aliens need to learn something about humans. We don't have an off switch." Across the planet, humanity was transforming. Old grudges between nations were forgotten. Political differences were set aside. Religious conflicts were ignored. Every human on Earth now had the same goal: survive and make the aliens regret ever finding them. The Zetharians had made a terrible mistake. They had studied human history and seen centuries of tribal warfare, political chaos, and technological limitations. They thought they understood humans. They were wrong. What they failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength had never been peace or unity or advanced technology. It was what humans became when pushed to the very edge of extinction. It was the ability to look at impossible odds and fight anyway. It was the refusal to accept defeat, no matter how rational surrender might be. The Zetharians had awakened something ancient and terrible in the human species. They had awakened the same survival instinct that had carried humanity from the caves to the stars, sharpened by 10,000 years of warfare against themselves, and now that fury had a single target. The second wave came 3 weeks later, and it was 3 times larger than the first. Lieutenant Danny Cooper stood on the surface of the moon, looking up at Earth hanging in the black sky above him. He was stationed at Armstrong Base, the largest military installation on Luna. His job was simple: defend this base or die trying. "They're coming," Sergeant Amy Zhang said beside him. She was checking her rifle for the 100th time, a nervous habit they all shared now. Danny nodded. His suit radio crackled with reports from orbit. The Zetharian fleet was descending, and this time they were not just sending fighters. They were sending troop carriers. The aliens wanted to take the moon and use it as a base to attack Earth. "Everyone to positions," Danny ordered. His squad scattered across the lunar surface, taking cover in craters and behind equipment. They had spent the last 3 weeks preparing for this moment, mining the approaches to the base with enough explosives to crack the moon itself. The alien landing craft came down like falling stars, their engines glowing bright against the darkness, dozens of them, each carrying hundreds of soldiers. The Zetharian Empire was done playing games. They were going to crush human resistance through sheer numbers. Danny watched through his helmet display as the first wave of landing craft touched down about 2 kilometers away. The doors opened and alien soldiers poured out, advancing in perfect formation. They moved with the confidence of an army that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Hold," Danny whispered into his radio. "Wait for it." The Zetharians came closer, their heavy armor making them look like walking tanks. They had plasma rifles, personal shields, and decades of combat experience. Against a squad of humans with conventional weapons, they should have been unstoppable. "Now," Danny said calmly. The lunar surface erupted. The mines they had planted went off in a carefully planned sequence, each explosion designed to throw debris upward in the low gravity. The Zetharian formation disappeared in a wave of dust, rock, and fire, but they kept coming. More landing craft descended and more alien soldiers poured out. The Zetharians were willing to take heavy losses to secure their objective. "Fall back to secondary positions," Danny ordered. His squad moved through the tunnels they had prepared, each step taking them closer to the base. They would make the aliens pay for every meter of ground. In orbit above the moon, Captain Nicole Brennan was leading what remained of Razor Squadron. She had survived the first battle, though her fighter had been badly damaged and repaired twice. Now she was flying a new ship, faster and better armed than the old one. Human engineers had been working day and night to improve their technology. "Nicole, you've got 3 bogies on your tail," her wingman called out. She banked hard, diving toward the lunar surface and pulling up at the last second. The alien fighters followed, but one of them misjudged the maneuver and crashed into the moon. The other 2 kept coming. Nicole led them straight into a field of orbital mines that the Defiant had deployed 2 days ago. The automated weapons locked onto the alien fighters and opened fire. One exploded immediately. The other managed to dodge and kept pursuing her. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," Nicole muttered. She cut her engines and spun her fighter around, flying backward and firing at the alien ship chasing her. Her shots hit home and the alien fighter disintegrated. "Scratch another one," she reported, but there was no satisfaction in her voice. For every alien ship she destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Above the battle, Commander Peter Grant watched from the bridge of the Defiant. His ship was one of only 3 human vessels still operational in lunar orbit. They were outgunned, outmanned, and running low on ammunition. "Sir, the Zetharian cruiser is moving into bombardment position," Karen Walsh reported. "If they open fire on the surface, Armstrong Base won't survive." Peter looked at the tactical display. The cruiser was massive, heavily shielded, and positioned perfectly to rain destruction on the human defenders below. His ship did not have the firepower to stop it, but maybe he did not need to stop it. Maybe he just needed to make it pay attention to something else. "Helm, set course directly for that cruiser," Peter ordered. "Flank speed. Load all remaining missiles." His crew turned to stare at him. They all understood what he was suggesting. "It was a suicide run, sir," Karen said quietly. "There has to be another way." "If you think of one in the next 30 seconds, I'm listening," Peter replied. When no one spoke, he nodded. "I thought so. All hands, brace for combat. Let's make this count." The Defiant accelerated toward the enemy cruiser, firing missiles and guns as it closed the distance. The Zetharian ship's point defense system shot down most of the missiles, but a few got through, hammering at the shields. The cruiser turned its attention away from the lunar surface and focused on the small human ship, daring to attack it. Plasma cannons opened fire and the Defiant's shields began to fail. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, Karen reported, her voice shaking but steady. "Forward weapons are offline. Engines at 60%. Keep firing," Peter ordered. "Everything we have." Just when it seemed like the Defiant would be destroyed, reinforcements arrived. 3 new human warships dropped out of high orbit, their weapons blazing. These were the Generation 2 vessels, built using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment and combined with human innovation. The lead ship fired a weapon the Zetharians had never seen before, a human particle beam, powerful enough to crack the cruiser's shields. The alien ship reeled from the impact, its attention now divided between multiple threats. "All ships, concentrate fire on that cruiser," Admiral Jacob Hayes ordered from his command center on Earth. "Take it down." The combined human fleet poured everything they had into the Zetharian cruiser. Slowly, impossibly, the alien shields began to fail. When they finally collapsed, human missiles struck the cruiser's hull directly, tearing through armor and ripping into critical systems. The massive alien warship began to list, losing altitude. It fell toward the moon in slow motion, unable to stop its descent. When it finally crashed into the lunar surface, the impact was visible from Earth. On the ground, Danny Cooper and his squad watched the cruiser fall from the sky. The impact threw up a massive cloud of dust and debris, and the shockwave knocked several of his soldiers off their feet. "Did we just win?" Amy Zhang asked, her voice full of disbelief. "We survived," Danny corrected. "That's not the same as winning." But for the first time since the war began, humans had destroyed a Zetharian capital ship. For the first time, they had proven that the aliens were not invincible. The battle for Luna raged for 3 more days. The Zetharians kept sending troops and the humans kept fighting back. Danny's squad was reinforced by Marines from Earth, and together they held the line. Nicole flew mission after mission, her fighter taking damage and being repaired between sorties. She lost count of how many enemy ships she destroyed. She stopped thinking about her daughter and her husband. She just focused on the next target, the next fight, the next second of survival. Peter Grant's ship was so damaged that it could barely fly, but he refused to abandon it. His crew worked miracles keeping the Defiant operational, patching holes with whatever materials they could find and rerouting power around destroyed systems. When the battle finally ended, Armstrong Base was still in human hands. The Zetharians had lost 5 capital ships, dozens of smaller vessels, and thousands of soldiers. The lunar surface was littered with the wreckage of both sides, but the base had held. Humans had defended their ground and refused to give it up. In the command center on Earth, Admiral Jacob Hayes received the casualty reports. Over 10,000 humans had died in the Battle of Luna. Countless more were wounded. 3 of the new warships had been destroyed and the others were heavily damaged, but they had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. President Alan Carter stood beside Jacob, reading the same reports. "The Zetharians are pulling back their fleet. Intelligence thinks they're regrouping, maybe calling for more reinforcements." "Let them," Jacob said quietly. "Every day they give us is another day we get stronger. We're learning, Mr. President, we're adapting, and we're not the same species we were a month ago." He was right. Humanity was changing. The war had stripped away the comfortable illusions of peace and safety. It had revealed what humans truly were beneath the civilization and culture. Survivors who would do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect their home and their species. Dr. Helen Price stood in her laboratory, watching data from the battle stream across her screens. The new particle beam weapons had worked better than expected. The orbital mines had been devastatingly effective, and the Generation 2 warships had proven they could match Zetharian technology. "We're closing the gap," she said to General Paul Fisher. "Another few months and we might actually be equal to them in technology." "And then what?" Paul asked. Helen smiled grimly. "Then we show them what humans can do when we're not the underdogs anymore." Across Earth, the production facilities worked around the clock. New ships were being built. New weapons were being designed. And millions of people were training for military service, ready to take the fight to the enemy. The Zetharian Empire had expected a quick conquest. They had expected humanity to surrender after the first few defeats.